Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum stood like a towering fortress on the outskirts of West Virginia. A dark silhouette against the rolling hills, its pale stone walls sagging with time and secrets. For years it had been the site of one of the most infamous experiments in psychiatric history, electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, and its dark legacy still lingered, embedded in the very air. Devon had joined Lena in their search for answers, having been intrigued by the hospital's notorious history. But it was not just the tales of barbaric treatments that had drawn them here. It was a series of strange, unexplainable events that had been reported by modern-day investigators. Cameras capturing flickers of movement in empty rooms, recordings of voices calling out in agony, repeating the same phrases over and over, some of which were shockingly relevant to the history of the asylum. The day they arrived, the air was stifling, thick, almost as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting. Inside, the once pristine hallways were now darkened and decayed, the sharp smell of mildew mingling with the scent of forgotten trauma. They were guided by Avery Quinn, a psychic medium who had visited the asylum several times, claiming to be touched by the spirits still trapped within. She had seen things, she said, unseen things, and she knew something was wrong, something they had yet to understand. Together they ventured into the ECT chamber, a room that once saw hundreds of patients strapped to tables, electrodes pressed to their skulls in an attempt to cure them of everything from schizophrenia to depression. The walls, lined with cracked tiles, seemed to pulse with an energy that felt wrong, unnatural. Avery led the group to the center of the room, her eyes closed in concentration. Devon felt a chill creep up his spine. Something was here. The EVP recorder set on a nearby counter suddenly flickered to life, its lights blinking rapidly. Avery spoke in a hushed tone, calling out to the spirits. The words, "Is anyone here?" were barely out of her mouth before the recorder crackled. A voice, deep and rasping, responded, "Help me! Help me! Please!" The sound echoed in the room, as though it were coming from the very walls. Avery's eyes snapped open wide with terror. I know that voice," she gasped. "It's Dr. Victor Heller." Devon's heart skipped. Dr. Heller had been one of the most notorious figures at Trans-Allegheny, a head physician who had performed hundreds of electroshock treatments, known for his cruel and experimental methods. He disappeared in 1929, his fate still unknown, his name largely erased from the historical records. The air in the room grew heavy, the temperature plummeting. Avery began to sway, her voice growing frantic as she spoke in an unsettling tone that wasn't hers. "He's here." Devon stepped closer, feeling the weight of invisible eyes on him. "What do you mean he's here? He's been dead for nearly a century." Avery turned, her eyes vacant as if she wasn't in the room at all. She muttered in a voice far too cold to be human, "I never left." The lights flickered once more, and the sound of footsteps echoed behind them, moving closer with each step. A low hum filled the room, as if the electricity in the walls had come alive, recalling the days when the asylum was full of suffering. Avery collapsed to the floor, clutching her chest, gasping for air as if the very air in the room had turned to stone. When she regained her composure, she spoke again, her voice weak. "The doctor never left. They all stay here, trapped in the machines." A sudden rush of unease filled the room, and Devon's mind began to race. Was Heller's spirit still here, bound by the same machines he used to torture his patients? Were his atrocities not only remembered but preserved, stored in the very fabric of the building itself? In a frantic search of the basement archives, Lena and Devon found an old journal from 1929, Heller's journal, which chronicled his experiments. On the last page, in hurried, desperate handwriting, he scrawled, "I can hear them. They are watching me, waiting for me. But I have learned the truth. They cannot die." And then, as if to punctuate his final words, a final entry. "I am not alone."